All right, welcome to another Krug Show. I'm Larry Krueger, and our guest today is our good friend Jake Hutchinson, who worked with me at The Leader and has covered the 49ers for a long, long time. And not just a long time, but he's also done a great job doing it. This guy's really on top of it, and he's with us to talk all things 49ers. What's going on, Jake?
Appreciate that, Larry. Not much. Just trying to be a stay-at-home dad. Working on tables, hanging out with the dog, stuff like that.
where's the dog nearby?
Yeah, he's in the bed. He's turned around. He's passed out. Gave him a little run earlier.
Well, let's talk headlines. Deshaun Watson, if what I'm reading
Yeah,
on my phone is right, he
yeah.
has just been dealt for $230 million.
Fully
Is that
guaranteed.
is that it? Is that so? And according to reports, the Seahawks are now making a push to trade for Baker Mayfield from the Browns. But what do you think
Yeah.
of Deshaun Watson going to the Browns, replacing Baker Mayfield? And is there no picks? It's just money going the other way?
It's 3 picks,
Oh, it's
three
three
first
picks.
rounders, a third rounder, and a fourth. I think if I have that right.
So it's 5 picks, including three
Right.
firsts and 230 million.
Which is quite a lot of money to give to a guy who has 22 active civil lawsuits, all active. That's quite a commitment. I mean, obviously last time we saw him play, he's incredible. Like we've seen him on the football field. Obviously the Browns get a lot better, but just the way this reporting is coming out, that they're like, yeah, well, it's basically built into his contract that he only loses $1 million if/when he gets suspended. The fact that there's like sort of a known fact that, a suspension is coming probably at some point. Just a weird vibe. It's hard to even like just look at the football side of it. But I will say Baker to the Seahawks. I think the Seahawks are going to be bad for a long time now. That whole ship seems like it's sinking real quick.
Watson. What a weird deal for Cleveland. They wind up alienating Baker, but they
Right.
land Watson. Now they may have basically ruined their year because he may get a 6 or 8 game suspension. You're starting quarterbacks out for 6 or 8 games. It's usually pretty hard to make the playoffs. But if you're a Cleveland fan, right, you're getting a great young
Right.
quarterback and you're locking him up for, you've got him locked up, on a big time deal. You move the three number ones. How does this affect? I don't know. Jimmy Garoppolo.
I
How
can't
does this?
figure it out.
Yeah,
I like
does this impact Garoppolo in any way, shape, or form?
it's tough to know like who's going to trade for him at this point. The Saints are probably going to go with Jameis Winston again. Seattle's not going to. I wouldn't suspect they go for him. So it's sort of like Indy but Baker wanted to go to Indy. So what if Indy makes a move for Baker? If that happens, then it seems like the 49ers are probably going to have to cut him. The Texans, I think, just roll with, the rookie they got at a Stanford last year, Davis Mills, because, they're rebuilding. So why would you, bring in a veteran anyway? So I don't know what destination it is besides Indy. Tom Brady coming back really screwed up Tampa Bay as a destination for somebody else. And I just think the numbers aren't working in his favor. And if it's not Indy, I really don't know, where it's going to be. But I mean, do you think there's a spot that works for him?
Well, I think it's Indy, right? Because Indy
Right.
was talking about Matt Ryan if Deshaun went to Atlanta. Now Deshaun's not going to Atlanta. Baker, I just read, maybe going to Seattle. So maybe him and Drew Lock kind of battle it out in Seattle.
That's a really
And
sad quarterback battle, by the way.
it is. But they also have all those picks they got from Denver and the
Right.
players for Russell. I think it's Indy. I mean, unless Indy, do you think it would, if you're Indy, if you're Chris Ballard, would you rather trade something for Jimmy Garoppolo, or would you rather have Marcus Mariota? Right, because I guess Mariota's
Right.
still out there.
I
That's a
you know
that's a
I
tough
would
call.
probably, if I was the Colts, I'd say, all right, we'll give you a fifth for Jimmy this year, because a fifth, you're not really losing anything by giving that up, and then basically like a conditional fourth, that could bump up to a third. And then it's like, if Jimmy plays, we're going to be in the playoffs. The Colts have a win ready roster, and like, despite Jimmy's flaws, he's on the whole a pretty average quarterback. We've seen enough Jimmy to get over this discourse. We know he's average, but he's a really good leader, and guys rally behind him. And if you have a decent scheme with decent players, like, he's going to make you competitive. You're going to be a competitive team if he's out there and if he's healthy. Problem is, again, he's almost never healthy. So I think if you're the Colts, I would say maybe see if you can do both. See if you can bring Mariota in and get Jimmy, because then that's a situation where it's like, all right, well, we're going to have at least an okay quarterback either way. But at the same time, like, do you really want to pay Jimmy Garoppolo and Marcus Mariota like a combined, whatever it is, $20-30 million to have an average quarterback, situation? So personally, I would go with Jimmy just because, that's, DeForest Buckner can vouch for him. He's solid when he's out there. I don't want to talk him up too much because, again, it's Jimmy Garoppolo. But I think he is definitely a better quarterback than Mariota, which is not to say Mariota's terrible, but I just think if you're going to get rid of Wentz, like, you have to get somebody who looks like an adult in the room, and Jimmy is at the very least, he's an adult. He's a guy that inspires confidence. You don't have to worry about him. And I think that's probably a safe move. You're not going to be giving up all that much anyway.
Cleveland and Indy seem to be in that camp that where it's like, the guy we had wasn't a great leader. We want a great leader. And maybe because of playing hurt, being a good company man this year with Trey Lance in the house, establishing himself as a leader despite the quarterback competition. Is it possible that maybe Garoppolo has won some people over as a leader and they view him as such, and maybe he's coveted for that reason? I don't know. I'll say this. Let me ask you this. Let's just say, for the sake of the argument, that Baker doesn't go to Seattle and Baker does go to Indy. Now that takes Indy off the board.
Right.
And the Saints go with Jameis Winston, and Carolina goes with who?
Darnold, I guess.
Darnold. Where do you think Carolina's in this thing? I guess between the Saints, the Colts, and Carolina, who do you think the Niners would like to trade him to? Who do you think potentially could offer the most? I know that's kind of a hard question to answer.
It's just like with Carolina, I just don't, it's like they invested a decent amount into Sam Darnold. They picked up his option. I think he's getting like $20 million a year right now. And I don't think they can get off of that money. So it's like Carolina, I think, makes more sense if they cut Jimmy. Like Carolina, I think you say, you know what? They cut Jimmy. Yeah, we'll sign Jimmy and we'll have a QB competition between him and Darnold. I think that plays a lot better than sending off like another third for the, second year in a row for a quarterback who doesn't move the needle all that much on a team that is sort of questionable. So I have a hard time seeing them as like a viable trade suitor. The Saints, I think, could be in the mix. We'll have to see. That is one that makes more sense to me than Carolina. I think that's like maybe the only team at this point outside of Indy that, could make sense for a trade. But, again, do they really want to give up assets, for Jimmy? I think the Colts it makes too much sense where if it doesn't happen, I just think it ends up with them cutting him. And we'll see. And maybe someone else gets desperate. I think it'd be really funny if Seattle just ended up trading for him. Just vibe-wise, I'd love to see him in the division, and then the 49ers go up to Seattle and, end up losing to Jimmy just for the discourse of that. But, I think Indy makes too much sense. If it's not Indy, maybe the Saints. But I have a hard time coming up with any other teams outside of that.
It's like you're in your scenarios, he's either traded or cut. I was listening to Greg Papa driving around today, and Greg's like, I'd like to keep Jimmy. He wants to keep Jimmy Garoppolo. And he's like, his argument is that, you can win a Super Bowl with Jimmy, and I don't want to get rid of a quarterback that I can win a Super Bowl with.
You can't win a Super Bowl with Jimmy.
I mean, you can debate that. Yeah. I hear Greg's John countered quickly with, you can't win with Jimmy, and then, it got a little testy. But let me ask you that. Is there any scenario that you see the 49ers bringing Garoppolo back?
No.
No,
I just don't see it, and because it's something.
Because why? Because that money's earmarked for Debo and Bosa, or because of leadership issues between they want to go with Trey and Jimmy. Why do you not see it as?
I think it's something where, unless Jimmy is like, sure, I'll take a massive pay cut, and I'm happy to be the backup. Which, why would he say that? Why would he, just give that up, out of nowhere? I think it's something where. First of all, it's the money. It's the money. They take the cap, I think, fairly seriously in terms of wanting to have flexibility. And the cap is something where if you want to, you can keep kicking the can down the road. The Saints have shown that. Where yeah, at some point you have to pay it, but also not really. If you just keep kicking it down the road forever, you can just keep kicking it, keep kicking it, keep kicking it, and work around it. And yeah, it's tricky and it makes it much harder to go after free agents. But again, the Saints have figured out a way to do it. And I think the 49ers, at some point, if they see that Lance, is proven, I think they could go sort of the Rams route where they go all in. But I think at this point, they're sort of trying to be a little bit more cautious, not just going all out and throwing caution to the wind and just signing everyone they can because they don't exactly know what they're going to get from Lance yet. But yeah, if they're going to re-sign, even if it's just Debo or both Bosa, like they're going to need the money from Garoppolo to roll that over if they want to make other moves too and keep being competitive. To keep Jimmy on the roster and just have a gaping hole of $25 million, the whole thing about bringing in a rookie quarterback is that you get him for $7-8 million bucks. You get to spend that $20 million elsewhere. They also paid Nate Sudfeld $2 million, which to me really suggests that they're going to make him the backup. I don't think they'd guarantee that if they didn't view it that way. So, and just the fact that Garoppolo gave a farewell, like him and his agent want him out and to get another spot. I think it worked for 1 year, and they did really well to make that work for 1 year. But the thought of bringing that back and being like, oh, we're bringing him back, but he's the backup now. I just don't think that plays, and it doesn't make sense to me at all. So, yeah, I don't see a way he's back.
Interesting. It's time to pay the bills. We should tell people who we're sponsored by here. The Good Guys 38th All-American Get-Together is sponsoring us. It's March 26th and 27th at the Alameda County Fairgrounds in Pleasanton it's America's favorite car show, and there's over 3,000 American-made or powered hot rods, muscle cars, and trucks. They'll all be out there on display. The Nitro Thunderfest, the indoor lowrider exhibition. Who's going to win this year's Good Guys Fuel Curve Custom of the Year? Go to good-guys.com, and you can see it there on the screen, good-guys.com, to either register your ride or get tickets or for more details on the show. And I'm wearing today my Caceres t-shirt because Caceres is also a sponsor of the Krueg Show. And thanks to Tony Casera, you can find them at 7372 San Ramon Road in Dublin, California. If you're looking for a fantastic suit, you got a prom coming up, you want to outfit your teenager with a great looking tux, or you just want to look sharp. And if you're of any size, any age, go in there, ask for my man Tony Casera. He will take care of you. And we're also going to have some Krueg Show merchandise with t-shirts where you can order them online. We'll tweet that out, but also you can go into Caceres in Dublin, and we just gave you the address, and they will be selling the shirts right there in Dublin. So check out Caceres Men's Clothing in Dublin. You look like a guy who could use a new suit, man.
I could use a suit.
You could. Well, Jake could. Tony, if you're watching, Jake could use a suit. One more on Garoppolo. If the 49ers could move him, do you see outside of Debo extension, Bosa extension, do you see an expenditure, a free agent that's maybe out there that like they couldn't afford today because they got the Garoppolo money, but if they could move off of the Garoppolo money, maybe they would get involved with? Do you see any name out there that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're going to go after, a free agent, you should probably go after an edge, like add somebody else to Bosa. They're all about attacking the defensive line. They lost DJ Jones, but and I sort of expect that the way they're going to approach this is use like a second or a third round pick on bringing somebody in. But, I think it was Zadarius Smith just reneged on whatever team he was about to sign with. I think he's still out there. There's Clowney, Mario Addison, Trey Flowers. There are a few guys out there that are veterans that, it might be something where they don't get the deal they want right away. And maybe when these post-June 1st cuts, they sort of linger around. I think if it's something where you want to compete now and you want to, add something, then, you go for a veteran defensive end. I think that would be a solid way to upgrade. I also think they could do well to add another tight end. I'm a big 2 tight end set guy, and I think Kyle has always had that dream, and they've never really made it come to fruition. But that might also make more sense going through the draft. Get somebody like Ohio State's Jeremy Ruckert, somebody like that. So, I think defensive end would make the most sense. And, I like the fact that they added a solid corner, though.
We got a bunch of people who want to weigh in on the chat. How about this one? We go to GTC Reels. He says Jimmy is the modern day Steve
Nice.
DeBerg. I'm not going to argue with that one, GTC. I think you're pretty much right on that. Jason Ryback says I went to high school with Tony Casera. He is a great guy. All right, way to go, Jace. And we've got another one here. Mario Morel says trade Jimmy to the Texans, but you think the Texans are going Davis Mills, huh?
It's just like, I mean, I think the Texans are a theoretical option, but it's like, and I think Casario, right? He's worked with Jimmy from New England, but it's also something where, like, Davis Mills looked decent at times last season, and they're going to suck this year. They're going to suck no matter what. And Jimmy does have, he technically hasn't, his no trade clause is gone, but Don Yee can be a pretty influential agent, and I don't think he's going to say, yeah, we're cool with going to the Texans. I think if that's the case, he'd say, cut me, but if the 49ers want to trade him, technically they can send him wherever. But I do think it's something where the Texans are a team that's going to suck for probably a few years while they rebuild. And, it makes sense to have a stopgap quarterback when you have somebody, to develop, and there's a really competitive team already, but they don't have a competitive team. It's all rookies. So give the young guys reps. And I think that's probably how they're looking at Davis Mills is let's see if he can be, a little bit more than he was and see if we can have some found money with that. And he's on a way cheaper deal than Garoppolo too. So yeah, that's kind of why I think the Texans aren't going to be in on him.
All right, so we're going to decide today on the 18th of March that it is Jimmy will get dealt or Jimmy will get cut.
I keep
cut or dealt.
waffling. I still lean trade. Trade. I still think
day 2 pick, day 3 pick, or picks.
Day 2. I've been firm on like a 5th and a conditional 3rd or a conditional 4th. Where it's something where if he plays, then like the pick moves up next year. If he doesn't, then it's a 4th or a 5th rounder, maybe a 3rd. But at this point, they'd be lucky to get whatever. I mean, if anyone will trade them anything for Jimmy, they should take it, because I think a lot of people, they're kind of like sharks circling right now, and they're like, if you want to keep him, great. We're not that desperate for Jimmy. So either you cut him and, we'll sign him, or, we'll trade you like a 5th, And I guess that I should probably lean more towards him being cut, but like still in my gut, I still feel like a trade's going to somehow get done, at least so they can save some sort of face. Though they've kind of screwed this thing up, it looks like right now. So we'll see, but I barely lean towards him still being dealt.
And the third quarterback is who? A rookie or another veteran? Let's say it's Lance and Sudfeld, and who's your third guy?
Josh Johnson, maybe.
Really?
Like
just somebody they can manipulate back and forth on the roster.
Yeah, just a practice squad guy.
Practice squad guy.
So I think Josh Johnson makes a lot of sense. Shanahan raved about him. He was with the Jets, I think, last year. And he's a veteran guy in this league too that I think could help Lance. So that's my guy who's basically coming in for free and is a body, which I don't want to call him a body, but it basically you need somebody who's just sort of there. Who's sort of safe, and you don't have to pay him all that much.
Are they justified in going with Sudfeld so strongly as the number 2? I mean, wasn't this the problem not that long ago? Is your starter goes down, and who do you got? Now you go with Trey. Trey potentially could be more durable, but if you're going to run him like Shanahan ran him against Arizona, he could be less durable, and we could see an awful lot of Nate Sudfeld. Do you think that's the plan?
Well, that's the funny thing, right? It's like they had this whole narrative like, hey, we need to upgrade our backup quarterback position. It's like, well, they really only said that while their quarterback was Jimmy Garoppolo. And now that Trey's the quarterback, or it seems like it's going that way, it seems like, hey, well, maybe the number 2 quarterback doesn't matter all that much. I think there's an old Tom Moore quote out there when he was talking to Gruden and Jaworski about Peyton Manning. They're like, hey, why don't you give your backups reps? And he's like, guys, if 18 goes down, we're screwed. We don't practice screwed. So I think that's how the 49ers are kind of looking at this, where it's like, hey, we're going with Lance and, whatever. Let's not spend money on the backup quarterback position, because realistically, it doesn't matter all that much. And if it does matter, we're screwed anyway. So, it's like they could have had Tyrod Taylor for, $8 million or something. I think they just said, let's just reap the benefits having a rookie quarterback on this contract, spend money elsewhere, and get some extensions done.
And maybe they like somebody in the draft. I mean, I like a couple of these day
That's
3
fair.
quarterbacks. Skylar Thompson from K-State. I like him. Heck, I like Nick Starkel, who played at San Jose State, started at A&M. I'd take Starkel. You know, he's not going to get drafted, but I'd take Starkel after the draft and bring him in. 6'4" kid, pretty athletic. There's some decent quarterbacks out there, and Skylar Thompson is a nice quarterback. You know, I mean, they may have a rookie in mind for that
Right.
third spot. Let's segue to the wide receivers. There was a rumor, you know, a lot of people speculating about Julio Jones because, you know,
Right.
Kyle has spoken publicly on his affinity for Jones. There was a rumor tying Jarvis Landry to the Niners. I don't even know if Landry's still out there or if he's been picked off. We know they've got Debo. Is he a runner? Is he a running back?
Right.
Is he a wide receiver? You got Ayuk, and you've got now Ray Ray McCloud, who's a return guy, and you have Juwan Jennings. So that's 4. Most teams keep 5, sometimes 6. So are they after Julio? Are they after Jarvis Landry? Do you think they had a receiver in the draft? Are they done adding receivers? Let's talk wide receiver. How do you see it?
I could weirdly see like a third round pick being used more than I could see them going after Jarvis Landry or something like that. Not because it wouldn't be a good pickup, but they just always strike me as a team that whenever you hear, you know, one of these big name guys comes on the market, right? It never feels like the 49ers are really that in on them. It always feels like, you know, the Ravens or some other team that's cap strapped always finds a way, you know, some team in the AFC, because it feels like the 49ers know our roster is probably just good enough to at least get us to the NFC Championship if our quarterback is decent, because the NFC is not that hard. The AFC is a bloodbath, and all those teams have to get into these bidding wars over free agents left and right, because if they don't, you know, they're just going to flame out and have no chance. So I think the 49ers are, and it's kind of annoying just how judicious they are with the cap, because sometimes you're like, you know, they couldn't have thrown $3 million at Raheem Mostert. You know, maybe they saw that, you know, the Dolphins were going to keep paying him more than whatever they would have offered. But yeah, I mean, you've got Keelan Cole out there from the Jets. He was decent with the Jaguars a couple of years ago. I think he's out there. You know, I think Emmanuel Sanders is out there again. So maybe I think Julio Jones would be awesome. And yeah, I think that's a really solid addition. But I just get the vibe that the 49ers, whenever there's a guy out there that's on the wrong side of 30, even if he's great, if they have to pay them any sort of actual salary, it feels like they're not super in on that, especially because their young receiving core is looking pretty good.
What do you think of the pickup so far? You got the 49ers, for those who, you know, keeping track of this, they signed Oren Burks, a linebacker who played at Oak State. He played with Green Bay. Charvarius Ward is their big money signing. He's a cornerback. Hassan Ridgeway, a defensive tackle, probably playing a rotation. Today they signed George Odom from the Colts, who's a special teamer safety. And then Ray Ray McCloud, who's another special team guy, return guy, a little bit of a speed threat. Of the signings, which signing do you like the most?
I like Ward. I mean, that's the obvious one, right? I think all the special team signings are pretty great. It's funny, just they're like, we're done with Hightower. We're actually bringing in special teams. That was Raheem Mostert's original contract, right? It's like 3 years, $9 million, and they brought him in to be the gunner and like the leader of the special teams unit, especially on punt coverage. So I like those moves, but I think Charvarius Ward is just a really solid young corner. I watched some of his tape the other day, and he is more of like a man fit. But I also go back and think like last year, part of the way they did coverage was to protect their corners, because they knew Josh Norman was washed. They knew Ambry Thomas wasn't ready. Manuel Mosley was out for so much of the year. They knew their corner situation was rough. And so part of it was, I think D'Amico's like, let's just play safe. Let's play a lot of cover 3. Let's just, you know, put the onus on other teams to, if you want to try and beat us over the top, like, you know, we're just going to play safe and try and prevent those big plays. And you can try and beat us underneath and nickel and dime us. I think with Ward, you have a bona fide corner who can play real man-to-man press coverage. Mosley, I'm interested to see if they put him in the slot and put Thomas outside, because Thomas was sort of encouraging down the stretch. But you basically got 3 young corners, age 26 or younger, that are all really solid. And I think Ward does something where based on his tape, I think he's really good at getting into guys and shutting down the sideline. He uses the sideline to his advantage. He uses length to his advantage. He gets up close, prevents guys from getting space, especially over the top. Coming to the inside that's where he gets beat more often, I think, on digs, in cutting routes, and sometimes double moves. But I think that's something where you say you've got Fred Warner, you've got great linebackers who can cover well over the middle. And so if that's where his weaknesses are, that's kind of where you want them to be.
Biggest free agent loss for the Niners. Who do you got? I had DJ Jones, but I mean, you could make an argument for Mostert. You can make an argument for Tomlinson. Heck, I think you can make an argument for Kentavious Street. There's enough. They've lost some talent here.
Yeah, I think it's I'll say it's Tomlinson, and then watch Aaron Banks is just fine next year. I'm a little worried about that. They weren't really talking Banks up. They were just like, yeah, he's getting better, I guess. Like he's around,
right.
He's here.
He was our second round pick, but we don't have any confidence in him. I mean, that's what they're saying basically.
It's just so hard. Yeah, it's so hard for me to talk about Aaron Banks without thinking about Creed Humphrey and the fact that he was right there for him.
Right.
And they should have obviously taken him.
He went to Kansas City, the Oklahoma guard, right? Center.
Yeah, he's a center who you easily could have just started at guard.
Right.
And then, when Alex Mack retires, he's your future center. So that bothers me. But I think Lakin was so valuable in that offense that, we'll see. But it's also like the guard position. They got away with Daniel Brunskill for a while. So, maybe it's not that valuable. I think the most valuable player, if we're just talking about most valuable, it is DJ Jones, just because of what he did. But it's also at a position where it's not that valuable of a position. Like, I think he's the most unique, valuable player they lost, but they've been able to replace defensive tackle. I think they're hoping Javon Kinlaw can do something, which, as a guy who's 6'5", 6'6", 330 pounds, like coming off an ACL reconstruction, it's kind of a harrowing prospect. And, I'd like to see them make another addition, but they're also getting Maurice Hurst back for basically free and probably think they can get some value there. So I'd say Tomlinson's the biggest loss and Jones number 2. That's kind of obvious. But again, they play positions where I think the 49ers think we can kind of replace them for cheap or get similar value for not that much more.
You're a guy that follows the draft. Why don't we finish with that? What do you think? What's the Niners' number one need going into this draft? And maybe that aside, just you follow this stuff. Is there a player that intrigues you as we're, here we are on the 18th of March. The draft is about a month and 10 days away. So we're kind of inside the window, the lying season, as they say. But is there a draft prospect that you either saw in the season or saw at the combine that you really like? And give me the Niner number one need in your mind going into the whole thing.
Yeah, I think they will value edge, especially if they don't add anyone else. I like the kid out of Cincinnati, Myjai Sanders. He's super long, physical. I like him a lot. I've been starting to get into more tape a little bit, but I think he's a really solid addition. It's weird. It feels like every year now you've just got these edge rushers where there's a lot of guys who they're just hyper athletic and you watch their tape and they look horrendous, but then they come into the league and they're molded by a really good defensive line coach, and they turn out to be really solid. I think it was Odafe Owe. I think he's on the Giants. He was a guy who I watched his tape at Penn State. I kind of hated it. I looked like he didn't know how to play football, and he had a great year. So it's something where it almost doesn't matter. As long as they get an athletic edge rusher, I think, you saw Chris Kasurik, what he did with Arden Key, with guys who've done very little in their career. He can get the most out of them. So I think you get any guy that's long, physical, some sort of bend, and I see that with Sanders. He's kind of a menace. I think that's how they prioritize it, and that's what I've been looking at for them. I also think I talked about it earlier, Ruckert, just out of
Ohio State tight end.
He's got such good hands. I think they could really benefit from adding another tight end. Charlie Warner really improved this year as a blocker. I'm still not super sold on him as a receiver, though. And Ross Dwelley just fell out of the rotation completely. And I think they could really upgrade there, in the 4th or 5th round for pretty cheap. And there's always some athletes at the tight end position, kind of like, I think that the Broncos do it every year where they basically draft a tight end who doesn't know how to play, but he's just a super freak athlete. And they say, just go run and we'll throw you the ball and see what happens. Yeah, I think you can usually find that in the 4th or 5th round. And I think that'd be worth the 49ers taking a swing on too.
Yeah, the Cincinnati defensive end. I believe somebody asked him at the podium in Indy about meeting with the Niners, and didn't he have some good things to say? I mean, it seemed like they were
Yeah,
impressed by his game. I think it was the way he described it. It sounded too like, just looking at some of the things that kind of came out from the combine, that they talked to a number of the edge rushers. So
right.
I think you're right, Jake, to hone in on that spot. That looks like, and that's kind of that's the philosophy of this team, right? Build up the
Always, yeah.
defensive line, move that quarterback off the spot, and we'll get by with whomever in the secondary, because we're going to put our money up front. We believe in the front, and that's how they want to affect football games. So, the good news for them, I guess, is that it's a good draft for defensive linemen and edge rushers in particular. So,
Right.
all right, man. Good stuff. Always good to wrap with you. And hopefully, as the Niners make more moves throughout the offseason, we can get you back. And if people want to follow you, tell them how they can.
Follow me on Twitter at Hutch Diesel. Yeah, that's my handle. Appreciate you having me on, Larry. Good to talk to you again, man.
Good to see you. Jake Hutchinson.